Reach into almost any healthy garden soil, and within seconds you will find one. Pale pink, muscular, moving in that slow, deliberate contraction that looks almost mechanical. Most people drop it back without thinking twice. Almost nobody stops to consider what that animal is actually doing in the soil beneath their feet, and why Charles Darwin spent the last 40 years of his life studying it and called it one of the most important creatures that has ever lived on this planet. Not one of the most important insects, not one of the most important soil organisms, one of the most important creatures. Full stop. Darwin was not being poetic. He was being precise. And by the time we are finished today, you are going to understand exactly why. The earthworm is more sophisticated than it looks. Lumbricus terrestris has no eyes, no ears, no lungs, and no skeleton. It breathes entirely through its skin, absorbing oxygen directly from the water film on soil particles around it. It has 5 pairs of hearts, not 5. It detects light through photoreceptors in its skin despite having no eyes, and responds to vibration with enough sensitivity to detect a predator approaching from meters away. The animal most people consider simple is running on a biological system that is quietly remarkable in almost every component. Now what it does, because this is where everything changes. An earthworm eats soil, not just the organic matter in the soil. It ingests soil itself, passes it through a digestive tract lined with calcium-secreting glands, and excretes it as castings. What comes out of that process is so chemically different from what went in that soil. Scientists use the word transformed rather than processed to describe it. Worm castings contain 5 times more nitrogen than surrounding soil, 7 times more phosphorus, 11 times more potassium. These are not marginal differences. These are the numbers behind why worm castings sell for more per kilogram than almost any other soils amendment available, and why the earthworm in your backyard is producing something that would cost you real money to replicate from any garden center shelf. The physical structure of worm castings is what makes them valuable beyond their nutrient content. The digestive process coats nutrient particles in a mucus lining that makes them water-stable aggregates, small clumps of soil that hold their structure when wet rather than collapsing into compacted mass. These aggregates are the building blocks of good soil structure. A soil rich in castings drains well because it has structure. It holds moisture because aggregates retain water in their pores. It resists compaction because the aggregate structure creates physical resilience. Simultaneously, better draining and better moisture retaining than soil without castings. No synthetic amendment has ever fully reproduced this combination. The tunneling matters as much as the castings. A healthy earthworm population can number in the hundreds per square meter of garden bed. The tunnel network they create is a permanent drainage and aeration infrastructure extending through the entire soil profile. Research from Wageningen University found that soils with high earthworm populations showed water infiltration rates up to 10 times higher than comparable soils without them. 10 times. In a heavy rain event, that difference determines whether your garden absorbs the water or loses it as runoff. In a drought, it determines whether moisture stored deep in the profile ever reaches your plant roots at all. Here is the connection most people never make. The tunnel is not just a passive channel. As the earthworm moves, it secretes mucus from its body wall that coats the tunnel's surface. This mucus feeds an explosion of microbial activity along the tunnel walls, creating what soil scientists call the drylosphere, a zone where microbial populations run 10 to 20 times higher than in the bulk soil just centimeters away. These microbial communities produce plant growth hormones, suppress soil pathogens, fix atmospheric nitrogen, and release phosphorus into forms plant roots can absorb directly. The earthworm does not just create a physical channel. It creates a biologically activated corridor, a living tube of microbial richness running the full length of every tunnel in your soil. Every tunnel is a nutrient pipeline. The earthworm builds it, lines it, and stocks it with the organisms that run it. Earthworms also emerge after dark and drag leaf litter and organic debris from the soil surface down into their burrows. They store it, allow it to partially decompose, then consume it, composting in place at the exact depth where nutrients are most available to roots. This is why leaf litter disappears from garden soil surfaces over winter, even when no human has touched it. The earthworms took it underground, processed it, and returned it to the root zone as nutrition. In an undisturbed garden, this process is the primary mechanism by which surface organic matter becomes plant available. The earthworm is running a composting operation inside your soil and delivering the result directly where it is needed. Now the threats. The earthworm population in most residential gardens is a fraction of what it should be, and the reasons are almost entirely human-caused. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizers acidify soil over time and disrupt the chemistry earthworms depend on for digestion. Pesticides, particularly fungicides, are directly toxic to earthworm populations in ways most product labeling never clearly states. Tilling destroys tunnel networks, cuts worm bodies, and forces populations to rebuild from scratch every season, rather than accumulating the deep established infrastructure that produces the greatest soil benefit. Compaction from foot traffic drops oxygen levels to the point where populations simply cannot sustain. Every one of these compacts in conventional garden management. Everyone is reducing the organism doing more for your soil than everything else you are doing combined. The most impactful thing you can do for your garden is not a better fertilizer or a better tool. It is creating conditions that allow earthworm populations to reach their natural density. Leave organic matter on the soil surface. Reduce tilling in established beds. Avoid synthetic fertilizers that acidify the soil. Never work wet soil that compacts under pressure. Treat the soil as a living system that builds over time, rather than a growing medium that gets reset each season. A garden with a healthy earthworm population needs less water because soil infiltrates and holds it better, needs less fertilizer because castings supply nutrients continuously, needs less added compost because the worms are composting in place, needs no tilling because the worms are aerating. Everything the earthworm does replaces something you currently pay for or work for manually. It asks only for the conditions that allow it to survive. Give it those, and it gives you back soil that grows plants better than anything you can purchase. Darwin's final book, published months before he died, concluded that all the fertile soil in the world has passed through the bodies of earthworms multiple times over geological history. Not some of it, all of it. Every particle of topsoil that has ever grown food and fed civilizations has at some point passed through an earthworm and come out transformed. The next time you find one in your soil, stop for a moment. You are holding the organism that built the ground your food grows in. Put it back gently, in the dark where it works, and leave it to do what Darwin spent a lifetime proving it does better than anything else on Earth. Have you ever noticed a real difference in your soil where earthworms are abundant versus where they are not? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to understand the next creature quietly building the foundation of your garden, the next video is already there.